Chapter 8. Missing Mirabelle. Rondoin tore into his bread. Chewing, he looked at his mother with a quizzical expression. After swallowing, he said with a puzzled tone, "This is fresh bread, but the new kitchen has no bake oven." "Agnes has worked a miracle," said his mother. She made a little oven in the fireplace by putting a clay pot over a pan on top of the coals.
"She told me that she remembered that her mother used to bake bread like this, as they didn't have an oven,"
said Rondoin's father. Just then, Sir Andrew entered the room carrying a pile of cloth.
"I apologize for interrupting your meal,"
he said, using a tone of deference.
"Please speak,"
said the king.
"Did you find enough cloth?"
"Almost," said Sir Andrew.
"We still need enough for one bag."
"Just a moment," answered the queen. "We can use some cloth from my sewing box. Someone will get a fancy bag," she said, smiling. "Rondoin, can you find a suitable piece of cloth?" she asked. Rondoin took his last spoonful of soup and went to look through the now well-known contents of the wooden sewing box. "I think I know just the piece," he said, remembering a rectangle of blue cloth. "Here it is," he said, holding up the light blue woolen cloth. "Perfect," said the queen. "This is cloth from my old worn-out cave. I think it will make a fine food bag." "May I go with Sir Andrew now?" asked Rondoin. Both his parents nodded, and Rondoin and Sir Andrew soon wound their way around scaffolding on the 3rd floor and then around the piled-up furniture on the 2nd floor. When they reached the new kitchen, they found 6 workers already sitting in a circle. Sir Andrew had already explained that they would be sewing bags so everyone leaving the castle could carry onions, carrots, and turnips. Sir Andrew announced,
"Here is your teacher, Prince Rondoin."
Rondoin gave one piece of linen cloth to each sewer, and Sir Andrew gave each person a needle and a thread. Standing in the middle of the circle, Rondoin showed them how to thread a needle. Then he showed them how to push the needle in and out of the fabric. He encouraged them to take small stitches so their bags would have strong seams. After everyone learned to do a basic running stitch, the sewing group settled into a time of quiet. Once they were comfortable with sewing, they fell into a thoughtful conversation. They spoke about going home, and they wondered how long they would have to stay in their homes, which they assumed were, like the rest of the castle, surrounded by water. Agnes, who had been cleaning the kitchen, spoke up. "It will be many weeks. The last flood wasn't as deep as this one. We won't be able to travel by foot until the water goes down and the mud dries enough that you don't sink in as far as your ankle with every step.
"As soon as this rain stops, I will ferry you home to be with your families,"
said Sir Andrew. "When I get home, I'll tell my daughter Mirabelle that I was taught to sew by a young lad," said a tall man named Ricard. Up until that moment, Rondoin had not thought much about his friends, but now an image of Mirabelle filled his mind. She was the only child at school who loved to run as much as he did. After school, they often ran together throughout the village and all along the river, and when they came to the lake, they stopped to catch their breath. Standing at the edge of the lake, watching the swans, Mirabelle often spoke about her family. Rondoin had to take great care not to show that he knew her father. He avoided speaking of his own home, and when Mirabelle asked, he said that he lived on a farm. Rondoin didn't feel like he was lying when he said this, for the castle was surrounded by acres of fields, of growing rye and oats and carrots and turnips and leeks and kale and so much more. And up on the hilltop behind the castle stood the great barn, with cows and goats and poultry. In a way, Even though his parents could not tend all of this themselves, they were farmers, for they were responsible for overseeing all the tilling, and the planting, and the weeding, and the harvesting, and the storing away. Ronduin remembered the moments when he and Mirabel parted. He always watched her running down the path through the forest toward her home at the edge of the village. He did not continue on his way along the lake until she had disappeared around the curve in the path. Then, for just a moment, even though he would likely see her soon, he strangely felt like he was missing her. Now, looking at Mirabel's father, his head bowed over his sewing, Ronduin felt as he always did as she ran out of sight between the trees. Of course, Ricard, Mirabel's father, knew that Ronduin, the prince, was friends with his daughter. But he had promised to keep Ronduin's royal station a secret. Now, Ronduin was concerned that the secret would be too hard to keep. He worried that perhaps Ricard would mention his name by mistake, and that when he went back to school, all his friends would know he was a prince, and they would treat him with deference. Ronduin took it upon himself to sew the blue woolen bag. He finished it just as the rest of the sewing group stitched their last stitches. They each placed 2 linen bags on the table, and kept one that they would load with carrots, turnips, and onions in the morning. Ronduin handed the blue woolen bag to Ricard, who smiled as he received it. "Thank you," he said. "This is a fine bag. When it is done holding carrots and turnips and onions, I will give it to Mirabel." "Just don't tell her I made it," said Ronduin. "That will be our secret," said Ricard. Chapter 9. The Rainbow of Power. Ronduin listened carefully. He drew the curtains from his bed and stuck his head out and listened again. Had the rain stopped while he slept? Stepping to the window, he drew back the curtain and saw misty rain falling. The rain had not stopped, but this soft rain under a brighter sky gave Ronduin hope that the storm was finally coming to an end. He heard a knock at his door, and, when he opened it, Ronduin was surprised to see that Agnes stood there, holding a tray upon which sat a steaming bowl of porridge. "Good morning," she said. "Your parents were up early and went right to work without eating. Your father asks that you find him soon," she said. "He has a job for you." Ronduin ate his porridge and dressed as fast as he ever had. When he stepped into the hallway, he found it to be bustling with workers getting ready to clamber onto the roof to repair the leaks.
"Good day, Ronduin,"
said his father, the king.
"Sir Andrew left at dawn to row the boat to the barn. I need you to go to the top of the turret. That has a view of the hill. He is bringing oats and onions and carrots to Roland, and he will return with eggs and milk and more. When he arrives at the hill, tell the queen. You will find her in the new kitchen, organizing the food to send to the village. Then go back to the turret. When Sir Andrew is starting back with jugs of milk and baskets of eggs, again, go tell the queen. We hope the rain will stop by then, so we can begin to ferry workers to their homes in the village."
"Yes, father," said Ronduin. Then he was off, zigzagging down the hallway, around the corner, weaving through the next hallway, and finally arriving at the door to the turret. Up the stairs he bounded and went straight to the window, where he looked out across the newly formed lake. In the middle of this lake, Sir Andrew steadily rowed the green rowboat toward the hill. At the top of this long hill stood a stately barn. Now, Roland, the keeper of the barn and the animals that lived within it, stepped out and, seeing Sir Andrew, waved and hastened down the hill to meet him. An oak tree stood at the place where the walking path met the lake. Roland waited here for the small boat, and, when the boat reached the shore, Sir Andrew threw a rope that Roland caught and tied to the oak tree. Ronduin's eyes had focused on the boat reaching the hill, but now as he looked back up the hill to the barn, he saw that Roland had left the door open so that the cows and the sheep and the chickens could amble out into the misty rain. The grassy hillside slowly filled with creatures nibbling the damp new grass. Suddenly, Ronduin remembered, "I'm supposed to tell my mother that Sir Andrew arrived at the hill." Ronduin flew down 2 flights of stairs to the 2nd floor, where he dodged around piles of furniture and burst into the new kitchen. Breathlessly, he announced, "He's there! Sir Andrew is at the hill with Roland." "Just what I wanted to hear," said his mother, while organizing piles of food on the long table. "Please let me know when he is on his way back to the castle, and bring me a report on the weather." "Yes, mother," said Ronduin. He retraced his steps and soon found himself again peering out the turret window. Roland and Sir Andrew brought jugs and baskets down the hill. They had loaded everything in a pushcart. Sir Andrew walked in front of it, bracing the cart so it would not go too fast on the hill. Roland grasped the 2 handles in the back and also held it back, as if he were pulling the reins to slow an energetic horse. Just as they reached the oak tree, the sky darkened with a squall. Thunder boomed, lightning flashed, and torrents of rain fell with such ferocity that, for a moment, Ronduin could not see through the rain to the hill. Then, as suddenly as the rain had begun, it stopped. Ronduin could feel that this was the end of the 3-day storm. It was as if the booming and the flashing were meant to announce that it was all over. Ronduin could see clearly now that the rain had stopped. Roland and Sir Andrew were loading the boat. Above them, the sky, still thick with clouds, reminded him of sheep shearing day. The clouds were like piles of white fleece against the dark barn door. Roland and Sir Andrew loaded into the boat, and then Sir Andrew stepped into it. Roland gave the boat a gentle push, and it floated slowly away from the hill. Just as Sir Andrew took hold of the oars and was about to row, a chicken fluttered out of the oak tree and landed in the boat. Ronduin could see that Sir Andrew and Roland found this very funny, for their bodies shook with laughter. They appeared to laugh even harder when a second chicken fluttered out of the tree and joined the first one on the stern of the little boat. Roland shrugged his shoulders, as if to say, "Goodbye, chickens. It's fine with me if you move to the castle." Ronduin could barely take his eyes off Sir Andrew, ferrying 2 feathered passengers. Remembering that his mother wanted a report about the weather, he looked intently at the sky. That's when it happened. A half rainbow. First faint, then bright, then brighter still, emerged from the clouds. It was as unusual as the storm itself, for this was not at all like an ordinary rainbow that filled a bright sky after a storm. This was, instead, a rainbow of power that dared to jump out into the dark and terrible sky. It defied the gloom and the turbulent clouds. It was as if the rainbow arrived to command the storm to stop and the sky to clear. And so it did. Chapter 10. 2 Fine Hens. Zooming down the stairs, a thought jumped into Ronduin's mind. More than a thought, it actually was a wish, a hope, a desire for an adventure with Sir Andrew. Maybe, thought Ronduin, just maybe, Mother and Father and Sir Andrew would give me permission to accompany Sir Andrew on his voyages to the village as he takes the workers back to their homes. Ronduin imagined the journey to the village that he usually took with Sir Andrew by horse cart, only this time in a boat with water everywhere. Ronduin burst into the new kitchen, which was bustling with people, and ran up to his mother and spoke, quickly and breathlessly. "Mother, mother, a power rainbow demanded the storm to stop, and it did. The sky is clearing. Sir Andrew is rowing, and he has 2 chickens, and then he can take people to the village. And can I go too?" His mother's eyes opened wide as she listened to Ronduin, and then she switched from being simply his mother to being a queen. In a loud, commanding voice, she announced, "The boat will be here soon. The unloading team will proceed to the door at the top of the stairwell. The first village group will wait behind them. Ronduin will hold the boat at the steps." The queen turned to talk with Agnes. Then she turned back to Ronduin and said, "Chickens? Did you say chickens?" "2 chickens, Mother. They fluttered onto the boat as Sir Andrew rowed away." "Then we'll have eggs," she said, smiling. "I'm putting you in charge of the chickens. When they arrive, catch them and put them in 2 of those big turnip baskets that are now empty. Once Sir Andrew leaves for town, carry them up to the 3rd floor balcony that looks out over the courtyard. They can live out there." Ronduin was about to ask again about going to the village with Sir Andrew, but the queen was busy talking to someone. Agnes found a couple of baskets. She turned one of them upside down over the other. She asked Ronduin to hold the baskets while she tied 2 of the handles together. Then she handed him another piece of twine. "Once the hens are inside, tie the other handles before you carry them," she said. "You can make a little chicken house on one end of the balcony so they have a snug place to sleep." Ronduin thought his mother hadn't heard him ask about going to the village in the boat. But now she turned to him and said, "I'm sorry, Ronduin, that you can't go with Sir Andrew. If we have extra room in the boat, we will load more bags of grain for the village." Ronduin sat on the cold stone step on the ground floor of the castle, waiting for Sir Andrew. A cherry ray of sunshine shone through the gigantic open castle door. But even this first sight of sunshine in many days did not cheer him up. He wanted more than anything to go to town, to catch a glimpse of his friends through the windows on the 2nd floor of their homes. He wanted to see what the village looked like with a river through its center instead of a road. And more than anything, he wanted to get out of the castle, to be sitting in the bow of the green boat under the wide, rain-free sky. Then he imagined that the spot in the bow of the boat held 3 bags of oats. And he imagined that one of those bags went to the home with Ricard, so that Mirabelle could have porridge. He imagined Mirabelle smiling, eating her porridge, and he realized he wanted her to have enough food, more than he wanted to ride to town in the boat. Ronduin heard the oars splashing before he saw the green boat. Sir Andrew turned the boat around before he rowed into the castle. Now he was poling the boat in backwards, so the wide stern of the boat would glide up to Ronduin first. A red chicken perched on the left of the stern, and a golden chicken perched on the right. "Ready for 2 fine hens?" asked Sir Andrew, as he used an oar to pole across the entryway and drew closer to the steps. "I've got baskets," said Ronduin. "When I count to 3, you grab the golden one, and I'll grab the red one," said Sir Andrew. "Move fast so they don't flutter into the water or take off up the stairs." "Ready?" asked Sir Andrew. "Ready," said Ronduin. The boat was very close now. Ronduin looked calmly into the eyes of the golden chicken. 1, 2, 3, said Sir Andrew slowly. When Sir Andrew said 3, Rondelin reached out and grabbed the legs of the golden hen with one hand. As he wrapped his other arm around the chicken's body, he pulled the golden bird close, tucked it under his arm, and stroked its head. Looking up, he saw that Sir Andrew had also been successful. He had the red hen tucked snugly under his arm.